The biggest challenge people face in life is that there is a very strong force that pulls our awareness downward instead of allowing it to rise up and reach its true state of love, joy, and connection to something higher, like God or whatever you choose to call it. This isn't something you caused or something that's your fault. It's just the way things are. There are forces that distract our consciousness and pull it down, like fear, insecurity, self-doubt, and embarrassment. These forces are real and they are powerful, but they aren't evil and they aren't the devil. I don't like when people describe them that way. It's not true. They are just lower forms of energy, lower vibrations. Everything in the universe is energy vibrating at different levels. There are low vibrations and high vibrations. Low vibrations are very strong and loud. They grab your attention easily. Higher vibrations, on the other hand, are much softer and more subtle, so you need to quiet yourself to feel or experience them. But it doesn't make the lower vibrations bad. They're just different, like how some radio waves are long and some are short. Neither is good or bad. They just have different frequencies. This whole universe works that way. Everything is just energy vibrating at different rates. And it's amazing that physicists today have discovered this too. They found that everything, whether it's molecules, atoms, or even subatomic particles, are just vibrations of energy. When scientists look deeper into things, they don't find solid particles. Instead, they find energy waves, tiny disturbances in what they call the quantum field. These waves look like particles, but really it's just energy moving around. It's like a calm lake. When you throw a stone into it, the water forms ripples. Those ripples are still part of the lake. They're just moving differently than the still water. In the same way, everything in the universe is just vibrations of energy. It's what ancient yogis taught thousands of years ago. They didn't need science to tell them this. They experienced it inside themselves. So there's no need to think in terms of good or bad, right or wrong. Everything just is. The universe is made up of everything, and everything is part of this energy. This goes on forever, from the tiniest things to the biggest things. It's all about different levels of energy vibrations. Lower vibrations are noisier and more obvious, not gross as in disgusting, but heavier and rougher. On the other hand, the higher vibrations are much more subtle, very quiet and still. What's interesting is that when these higher vibrations slow down, they turn into the lower, heavier ones. That's how things work. Scientists can change vibrations from one form to another using machines, like shifting between different parts of the electromagnetic spectrum. And all of creation is part of God. The highest vibration? Well, that's no vibration at all. What we call the unmanifest. It's pure stillness, pure awareness, like a completely still lake. Then, as the vibrations slow down, they become more and more like the grosser, lower vibrations we experience in daily life. It's not your fault that these lower vibrations exist. I've already mentioned examples like fear. Fear is a big one because it easily grabs your attention. It's not just about big, scary things like a lion chasing you. It's the everyday fears too, like, I'm afraid people won't like me, or I'm scared I said something wrong, or I worry I'll mess up in the future. These fears distract you and pull your consciousness down. Now think about love. Love is a higher vibration than fear. It's one of the highest emotions we can feel as humans, but it's subtle. Imagine feeling deep love for someone, and then they do something small, like burp while you're hugging. Suddenly that feeling of love can fade quickly, right? Maybe they say, I love you, but in a tone that doesn't sound right, and you don't feel the love as strongly afterward. It shows how easy it is for lower vibrations, like irritation or insecurity, to overpower higher ones like love. Have you noticed how, when you're in a crowd, if everyone is clapping but one person is booing, that's the person who grabs your attention? That's the power of lower vibrations. They're strong, and they pull your awareness toward them. This is what happens in life. These lower vibrations distract and drag your consciousness down. But it's important to remember that this isn't who you are. It's just something you're experiencing. For example, when you feel depressed, That's an extremely low vibration of energy that's pulling you down. Notice how we don't usually say, I'm experiencing depression. Instead, we say, I am depressed. The phrase I am is powerful because it defines your identity. You're not just describing a feeling, you're identifying with it. But really, you're not depression itself. You're just experiencing a low vibration of energy. Now, when you're feeling down, instead of saying, I'm going through low energy right now, you tend to say, I am down, I am hurt, I am depressed. But remember, you're not those feelings. You're just going through them. In English, we often use the words I am to describe who we are. It's funny because that's not actually who we are. When you say I am sad or I am angry, you're not really those things, you're just experiencing them. But these feelings can be so strong that they pull you in and you start to believe that's what you are. Now, if we look spirituality for a moment, it's not about getting rid of the lower vibrations like fear or sadness. In fact, thinking you can eliminate them completely isn't realistic, and it's almost like going against reality. These lower vibrations are part of life. They exist and always will. The real question is, do you have to let them take over? Do you have to let them distract you? For example, let's say you're feeling love, and that's a beautiful thing. But why do you stop feeling love so easily? You like love, right? But then something small happens, like someone doesn't call you when you expected, or they forget an anniversary, or they dress differently than you hoped, and suddenly that love goes away. We give up on love over such little things. It's so much easier to stop feeling love than to keep it going, isn't it? This is what spirituality is really about, taking a step back and understanding what's happening. The truth is, you're a conscious being. How do you know? Because you're aware that you're in there. You don't need anyone to prove it to you. You know you exist inside yourself. The problem is, what are you doing with that awareness? Most of the time, you're getting distracted by lower vibrations. You might think, well, I try not to. That's great. But it still means you're getting distracted, even if you're trying to avoid it. Maybe you try to distract yourself by going to a movie. If the movie is exciting enough, it pulls your attention away from your own thoughts and feelings. You stop thinking about your worries or who likes you and get absorbed in the movie. When that happens, you leave the theatre saying, that was a great movie, because it took you away from your distractions. But if the movie isn't that interesting, and you're sitting there thinking about your life, your problems, or your insecurities, you don't enjoy it. You say, that was boring, because it didn't distract you enough from those lower vibrations inside you. In the end, it's all about what your consciousness is doing, and often it's getting pulled into those lower vibrations, those distractions. That's what's really going on. Maybe someone says, oh, I've learned how to think positively. And why did you do that? Because if I don't, I get caught up in negativity. Well, that's fine. Positive thinking is great. But let me tell you, if there weren't forces dragging you down, you wouldn't need to focus on positive thinking at all. You'd naturally be in a better place. The truth is, you're being pulled down by these negative forces or lower vibrations. This is the starting point of real spiritual growth. It begins when you recognize what's happening. You're here, you're aware, and you're noticing things around you. But what are you noticing? Most of the time, it's the negative stuff. You're being pulled down by fear, insecurity, feeling self-conscious, and other distractions like what you like or dislike. All this mental noise is pulling you down. Do you often get distracted by fear or insecurity or your own ego? All these things distract you. Now, the fact that you're thinking about this shows that you've evolved to a point where you don't want to be controlled by these things anymore. You don't want fear or ego running your life. You don't want insecurity making your decisions. You don't want to live in constant worry about what others think of you. Do you want to live like that? You probably don't want to live in fear of getting older or fear of dying. You don't want to let these low-energy feelings take over your life. So what do? Instead? You try to avoid feeling them. That's what we're talking about here. Do you have to feel all that fear and insecurity? No, but that doesn't mean they just disappear. Just because they exist doesn't mean you have to let them drag your mind down. Lots of things exist, but that doesn't mean you have to give them all your attention. You can live with these feelings without getting sucked into them. Now, it doesn't mean the teachings that tell you to face your feelings are wrong. Some psychologists or therapists might say, get into your feelings. If you feel fear, face it head on. That approach is fine for some people. But yoga teaches something different. It doesn't mean either one is wrong. If you try to push away those lower feelings like fear, insecurity, or self-consciousness, they don't really go away. They stay inside you and they'll keep coming back up. Ignoring them or pushing them down isn't a healthy solution. Let me give you an example. Imagine you have a neighbor with dogs and you're afraid of dogs. The neighbor is calling his dogs and they're in front of you, trying to get to their home. You panic, start yelling, and try to shoo the dogs away. But guess what? The dogs aren't going anywhere, and you'll have to keep dealing with them the same way, over and over again. If I can't deal with the dogs running past me, I'll end up living my life trying to avoid them. That's the same thing that happens when you suppress your feelings. You're basically saying to yourself, I can't deal with fear. I can't handle insecurity. I can't face rejection. And I can't cope with these lower emotions. So you push those feelings away, but they keep coming back, don't they? Whether in your dreams or when someone says something that triggers you, it's hard to really get rid of those feelings. You might try to stay positive, telling yourself, I'm doing my best to stay positive, but when this person is negative, I just can't handle it. People often say things like, I need to stay away from all negative people. But why? Because their negativity brings out the negative feelings in you. And since you can't handle your own inner negativity, you can't handle theirs either. This isn't true spirituality, but it's a phase of it. If you're overwhelmed by negativity, it might seem like the solution is to distance yourself from people who trigger those feelings. However, in the long run, that's not the answer. Eventually, you'll be able to handle all kinds of emotions and energy, whether they're positive or negative, without them pulling you down. They'll just be there, and they won't affect you. But that's a goal for the future. For now, what you're aware of is that these lower emotions exist within you, and you're struggling to deal with them. Because it's hard for you to manage them, you want them to go away. And the way you try to make that happen is by pushing them away, which leads into all sorts of psychological strategies. Your entire mind, everyone's mind, operates around one basic thing. These uncomfortable feelings or vibrations exist. They are real. The problem comes when you realize they exist and you're aware of them, but you feel like you can't handle them. So, what do? You push them away. Over time, you build up this big storage of negativity, like fear, insecurity, and embarrassment inside of you. You keep trying to push these feelings down, but they don't go away. They keep trying to come back up, and you keep trying to avoid them. Now let's say you've already pushed these feelings away, so they're there, hidden inside. But because they keep trying to resurface, you start looking for ways to distract yourself. What do people do when they don't want to deal with their inner negativity? They look for things outside of themselves that can take their mind off it. You might try to find a job that excites you so much that you don't think about your inner feelings. Your work becomes like a movie, something that keeps you entertained and distracted. Or you might search for a relationship that's so special it makes you forget about your own emotions. You trust this person completely, and that trust makes you feel safe because you believe they won't hurt you. Sounds great, doesn't it? But here's the thing. What's really happening is that you have all this stuff stored inside you, and instead of dealing with it, you're trying to find things outside to distract you from it. You get caught up in paying attention to your job, your relationships, your kids, or even entertainment like movies. Anything that keeps your focus away from those uncomfortable feelings inside. So what's really happening is you've built up this pile of unresolved emotions because you can't handle them, and now you spend your entire life trying to avoid dealing with them. Think about it. Who are the people you choose to be friends with? Usually, they're the ones who don't make you feel bad about yourself. And who do you avoid or dislike? It's the people who make you uncomfortable. Maybe someone reminds you of your father, and because you had a difficult relationship with him, you feel uneasy around them. That's your psyche at work. That's your ego and self-image. You've built this idea of yourself based on how to avoid dealing with the difficult stuff inside of you. Your whole life strategy is based on keeping these feelings buried, and your relationships and actions reflect that. We've all gone through experiences that hurt us or didn't feel good, those lower vibrations of energy. Is that right or wrong? No, it's just how it is. Haven't you had those moments? The truth is, you have. Every single day, something bothers you. Maybe it's a thought, something someone said or didn't say, or even something you read in the news. Every hour, something seems to irritate you. And why? Because you can't handle these lower emotions, so you've stored them inside. Now, anything that triggers those stored feelings bothers you, and you spend your whole life trying to avoid feeling bothered. Let me put it this way. You're spending your life trying not to be bothered. You just want to feel okay and be happy. That sounds like a noble goal, right? I used to chase money. Now I'm chasing happiness. But the real question is, why aren't you already happy? Why are you so caught up in these low-energy negative feelings that you feel the need to constantly distract yourself from them? Here's what's really going on. We're all here, living our lives, but the part of us that's truly human is not the one that's constantly worrying. The real you is something deeper. It's divine. It's pure consciousness. It's very special, but it gets easily distracted by whatever is the loudest or most overwhelming thing going on inside you. And what's the loudest thing? It's those negative, low-vibration feelings that you keep pushing away. Every time you push them away, you're actually storing them inside. That's the reality. That's not just psychology, that's also spirituality. Now, if you've spent your whole life storing away every single thing that ever upset or disturbed you, what do you think your inner world is going to look like? It's going to be filled with disturbance and discomfort. And don't pretend you haven't done that. From childhood, you've been holding on to all the things that bothered you. What your mom did, what your dad did, what your uncle or a friend said or did. Your entire life, you've been keeping all that negative stuff inside because you couldn't deal with it at the time. And now it's still there. A psychologist might ask you, what happened? Did your parents divorce when you were 5? Did you not like your stepfather? Now you're 55. Does it still affect you? What is therapy for? It's to dig through all that junk to find out what's still bothering you deep down. Why is it still there? Because you put it there. You didn't make your parents get divorced, but when it happened, you couldn't handle it. So you suppressed it. That's what Freud called it, suppression. But I prefer the word resistance. Suppression is more of a psychological term. Denial, repression, all that stuff. If you want to understand it, study psychology. But resistance, that's something you see in yoga. Ask yourself this. Do you resist what's going on inside you? You're like a machine that resists everything. You can't handle your own thoughts or feelings, you can't deal with other people, and so you keep resisting and pushing everything away. Isn't that true? Don't you try to control everything around you, at work, at home, with your kids and with other people, just so you can feel a little better inside? You're constantly trying to manipulate the world so that your inner discomfort goes away. That's what you've been doing, right? The reason why everything feels like a mess is because I can't even handle what's going on inside of me. It's not just that I can't deal with other people. I can't deal with myself. When new situations or conversations happen, they hit all the old unresolved stuff I've buried inside. So what do? I try to control everything around me before it even reaches me. For example, I might say, "Don't talk to me like that, you know it upsets me. Sleep on the couch for 3 weeks." I'm trying to manipulate you and everyone else around me so that when things happen, they feel more comfortable and don't stir up my inner mess. But here's the truth. There's no real solution in doing that. I've stored all this emotional baggage inside, and now I'm stuck trying to protect myself from my own feelings. Isn't that the human condition? We carry all this unresolved pain and discomfort and spend our lives trying to avoid anything that triggers it. That's the starting point for understanding why spiritual growth is so important. Spiritual growth is the real answer, not just trying to get what we want. Most people think happiness comes from getting things to go a certain way, but that's not the answer. If you're always chasing what you want, it's because deep down you feel like you're not okay as you are. You believe, if only things outside of me were different, I'd finally feel better. So you end up manipulating and controlling everything. Your preferences, opinions, likes and dislikes, your dreams, and even your political views, all to shape the outside world to make yourself feel better inside. But what are all these hopes and dreams really about? They're about wanting the world around you to be in such a way that it makes you feel good. No one's dreams are about wanting things to be terrible outside so they can feel awful when it comes in. Every hope and dream we have is about wishing the world would make us feel better because deep down, we're carrying around this inner garbage that we can't handle. And the tricky part? Everyone has different garbage inside, so what works for one person might not work for someone else. Psychology teaches something important, that people are the sum of their experiences. Ever heard that? You are the result of all the things you've gone through in life. The experiences you couldn't handle got pushed down inside, and the ones you loved you cling to. That's where the concept of positive and negative samskaras comes from. The positive ones are the experiences you enjoyed and wanted to keep happening. The negative ones are the ones you rejected and tried to avoid. But here's the catch. Even the good experiences can cause problems. Why? Because you get attached to them. Let's say you meet someone who really excites you, but then you never get to see them again. How does that feel? Or maybe you go on a perfect vacation that feels like a dream, but you never get to go back. What happens then? Even the positive experiences can mess you up because you cling to them. That's what the Buddhists call clinging. You resist the things you don't like and you cling to the things you do like, and that's what gets stored inside you as your learned experiences. And what happens because of all this? You end up in a state of constant struggle. You're always trying to manipulate life, either to avoid the things that upset you or to recreate the things that made you happy. You're always wanting and not wanting, thinking that's the way life should be. Society even teaches us that this is the right way to live. Go out and get what you want, avoid what you don't want. But yoga doesn't teach that, ever. Yoga teaches that life is not about chasing what you want or resisting what you don't want. It's about letting go of both. True inner peace comes not from controlling the outside world, but from learning to handle what's inside. The real question is, why are you so overwhelmed that you can't handle reality as it is? This is a much deeper question than, how do I change or control reality so that I can handle it? These are two completely different mindsets, and they lead to very different lives. A spiritual life is never about trying to get what you want. Some people believe that if they get strong enough or practice certain mantras, they can attract what they want into their life. Sure, that might feel better than feeling powerless, but it's still a struggle. Even if you get what you want, you have to worry about losing it. And if you lose it, how do you think you'll feel? You'll probably feel twice as bad as if you never had it in the first place. Life isn't about getting what you want and avoiding what you don't want. Life is about asking, why can't I handle reality as it is? If I were leading a retreat, I would have you repeat that question over and over. Why can't I handle reality? That's the real question we should be focusing on, and that's why I teach the way I do. Look at it this way. We're living on a tiny little planet in the middle of nowhere, orbiting a star so huge that you could fit 1.3 million Earths inside of it. People ask, why do you keep bringing that up? It's because I wish you'd truly understand it. What does it matter in the grand scheme of things about one tiny part of a planet that's just one of millions? It's so small, yet we let ourselves get so worked up over it. And remember, our sun is just one star among 300 billion in our galaxy, and our galaxy is just one of about 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. Yet we can't handle what's happening to us during our short time on this tiny piece of dirt called Earth. That's the reality we're living in, but we let small things bother us so much. Why do I keep talking to you about this? It's because I want you to stop shrinking your awareness down to just the little things that bother you. I want you to see the bigger picture, to accept reality as it is. Think about it. There are 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone, and there are 2 trillion galaxies out there. Yet you get upset about what someone said to you. You have a mind capable of expanding to comprehend the vastness of the universe, of God, of everything, but instead you focus on little things like, what did that person say to me? Or why did they do that? It's such a tiny, limited way of thinking. I'm not trying to embarrass you by saying this. In fact, you should laugh. Isn't it true that we all do this? We focus so much on small, petty things when there's a whole universe out there that we're part of. Instead of trying to control reality to fit our preferences, why not expand our awareness and learn to handle reality as it truly is? So here we are, with this amazing ability to think about big things, like the fact that there are 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone. Wow, right? And still, even that is just the beginning. Your sun, the one that lights up your world, is 93 million miles away. That's a huge distance. Think about it. Miami is just about 360 miles away, and the entire Earth is about 25,000 miles around. But 93 million miles? That's incredible. And yet we sit here and complain about the sun being too hot. Can you believe that? You are so close to a massive star that you can feel its warmth from millions of miles away, and all you do is complain. You know those twinkling stars you see at night? The sun is one of those. It's just that you're close enough to feel its heat. How amazing is that? But instead of being awestruck by that fact, you get caught up in small complaints. Do you see what I'm getting at here? We pull ourselves down to such a small level of thinking. We forget that we are right next to a star. And I can't help but remind you, there are 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone. Now, do you know where the next closest star is? It's 4.3 light years away. Let me explain what that means. If you took a beam of light, and that beam could circle the Earth 7.5 times in 1 second, it would still take 4.3 years of travelling that fast to reach the next closest star. That's mind-blowing, right? Yet here you are worrying about what? Complaining about what? Being afraid of what? The stars are that far apart and there are 300 billion of them, and you're still getting upset over small things like, does this person like me? Or why did they say that to me? Or even smaller things like, did I wear the right clothes today? Or, oh no, I spilled ketchup on my pants before going back to work. What are we doing with our minds? We're allowing the lowest, most trivial things to distract us. Instead of using our minds to think about these vast and awe-inspiring realities, we focus on tiny, insignificant worries. Isn't that just a small sample of how we let low-level thoughts take over our consciousness? We're sitting in the middle of a massive, infinite universe, and yet we get upset over ketchup on our pants or a small scratch on the car. Does that make sense? In reality, what's a little ketchup compared to the vastness of the universe? There's not even ketchup on Mars. And yet, we're so worried about these little things that really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. We allow ourselves to get anxious and upset about the smallest imperfections in our lives, when in reality, we're part of something so much bigger. Now take a moment to think about what I just said about the stars. Remember, we're talking about the sun and the next closest star. But now let's go even bigger. There are 2 trillion galaxies out there. Your galaxy, the Milky Way, is just one of them, and it has 300 billion stars in it. But where's the next galaxy? The nearest major one is Andromeda, and it's 2.5 million light years away. That means if you could travel at the speed of light, it would still take 2.5 million years to get there. And remember, There are 2 trillion galaxies like this. Can you even grasp how vast that is? That's reality. Now compare that kind of thinking, this enormous, expansive consciousness, to how you use your mind every day. Big difference, right? When you think about the universe at that scale, there's no suffering out there. The suffering happens here, inside you, because you allow your mind to get caught up in the smallest, most insignificant things. Spirituality is about learning, not claiming, but learning to stop doing that. Learning to stop letting your mind get distracted by these tiny, unimportant things. Things like fear, insecurity, and ego. These are the lowest vibrations in the universe. But instead of letting them go, we build entire models of life around them. We say, I don't like this, so I want this other thing to happen instead. And before you know it, you're chasing after things that don't really matter. You end up like a hamster running endlessly on a wheel, not getting anywhere. Think about it. Sometimes you do get what you want, right? You've had moments where things went exactly the way you hoped. But how long did that feeling last? When was the last time you got what you wanted and never wanted anything else again? It's impossible to win that game. You can't escape from yourself, and you can't escape reality no matter how hard you try. So we've admitted there are these low vibrations inside us, like fear and insecurity. But that's not the real problem. It's like radio waves. Those are some of the longest, lowest vibrations in the electromagnetic spectrum, yet we've done amazing things with them. We use radio waves to communicate, even with far-out space probes. So you can work with low vibrations, but not if you're afraid of them or ignore them. You need to face them and understand them. It's like saying, I don't like gravity, I don't like being stuck on Earth. Well, guess what? If you don't learn about gravity, you're never going to fly. Gravity is just part of reality, and so is everything else. Each part of reality has its place, its purpose, and its nature. And you can learn to be comfortable with every bit of it. That's the key, learning to accept and understand reality as it is, instead of letting it overwhelm you. Now, I just said that you can learn to be comfortable with every single experience and vibration in reality. Notice, I didn't say get rid of these vibrations. The key is learning to be comfortable with them. When you're comfortable with them, they no longer distract you. Think of these vibrations as different parts of creation. Your consciousness, every single one of us, has the ability to experience all these vibrations without getting so caught up in them that you need to fight them, grab onto them, or try to change them. They're just part of reality. For example, you can go to San Francisco Bay and watch the ocean. Some people might say, oh, I don't like it when the waves are too big, or I was expecting to see bigger waves, or I wanted to see seals or whales. You can do that to yourself if you want. Let those thoughts and expectations distract you. Or you can just stand there and enjoy the beauty of what's in front of you, exactly as it is. That's what we're talking about here. Spirituality isn't about a specific vibration or experience. It's about sitting in a state of awareness where your consciousness is so evolved that it isn't distracted by all the different energies around you. You're able to remain steady, or as they say, seated in the seat of self. So, who are you? You are consciousness. You are not defined by the roles you play, whether you're someone's spouse, whether you're young or old. No, at your core, you are simply awareness of being. That's your true self. You're aware of everything happening around you, but you don't define yourself by those things. You are love, you are light, you are a spirit that transcends all the chaos. Your consciousness might descend into these experiences, but it doesn't get stuck there. This is what people mean when they say, you can be in the world, but not of it. You can engage with life, interact with it fully, but you don't get lost in it. Think about it this way. Let's say you have a job you love. Then one day, you get fired. Which experience do you like better? It doesn't really matter because both are valuable in their own way. When you had the job you enjoyed, it stimulated you and showed you what you were capable of. But when you got fired, you had the chance to see how negative emotions, fear, disappointment, frustration, could pull you down. But the important thing is that you didn't let those emotions trap you. You learned from both experiences. Both the good and the bad helped you grow. That's what this is all about. Being able to experience life fully, the highs and the lows, without letting it shake you from your true self. Imagine you're learning to play tennis. When you hit the ball into the net, it's actually a good thing because now you can learn what went wrong. You'll figure out how to hold your wrist properly and how to perfect your swing. Every single thing that happens teaches you something. There's no good or bad in these experiences. They're just opportunities to learn. That's what all of life is about. Every moment is a chance to grow. An enlightened person isn't someone who's off in some faraway mystical place. No, they're right here, seated in their consciousness. The difference is that they don't let life's ups and downs pull them away from that seat of awareness. It's not that they don't experience reality, they do, but they don't get lost in it. Let me tell you about a story from the Gita, which is one of the deepest spiritual texts ever written. There's a part where Arjuna, who is Krishna's spiritual son, asks Krishna, "You've told me about these enlightened beings. How can I recognize one? How would I know if I met someone who's enlightened? He seems just like anyone else." Krishna, who represents God, responds by saying, "An enlightened person walks, talks, and sits just like any other man. He doesn't float in the air. He's just like you and me." Krishna goes on to explain, "In moments of joy, an enlightened person isn't overly excited, and in times of sorrow, they're not overwhelmed by sadness. They accept both the good and the bad as they come, knowing they will also pass. It's like how rivers flow into the ocean, yet the ocean never overflows. It stays calm and steady. In the same way, all of life's experiences flow through the enlightened being, and they remain peaceful, serene, and balanced. That's what true yoga is, equanimity, and this teaching isn't unique to the Gita. Every religion teaches the same core truth. Christ, the Buddha, Judaism, they all teach this concept of inner balance and peace. Now here's the big idea. You are a powerful being, capable of handling anything life throws at you. So once you've reached this understanding, what's next? How should you live? The answer is simple. Serve others. If you can handle life and don't need anything for yourself, your purpose becomes about helping others. Since you are made of love, compassion, and wholeness, every action you take should be aimed at uplifting the energy around you. It's no longer about what's in it for me, but rather, how can I raise the energy of this moment? Think of St. Francis's famous prayer, "Where there's sadness, may I bring joy." He's talking about raising the energy. Can you lift the spirits of those around you? Instead of resisting or judging the world, can you bring healing and positivity to whatever situation you encounter? The message is the same in all teachings. Whether it's bringing health where there's sickness or joy where there's sorrow, it's all about serving and elevating the energy around you. You can't live the life you want if you can't deal with what's happening inside of you. If you can't face reality, you end up needing to fight, struggle, hide, or try to change things just to protect yourself from feeling like you can't handle it. Spirituality is all about learning how to deal with reality. If you can't handle reality, even a small part of it, then you're always going to be in some kind of trouble. But what happens when you're faced with something evil? Jesus said, "You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, don't resist evil." Why would he say that? When you fight against evil, it keeps your focus on it. It sticks around like blocking something in front of you. But the teaching is not to resist. What happens then? Evil passes by. Instead of fighting it, stay calm, stay clear, and bring positive energy into the situation. The big question is, can you actually do that? It's easy to talk about, but in reality, we often feel far from being able to handle everything life throws at us. There's always something that feels overwhelming. The real teachings of spirituality, like yoga, help you learn how to handle life, step by step. It's not about feeling guilty because you can't do it right now. You learn how, just like you learn to play the piano or a sport. The most important thing you can learn is how to deal with reality. Why? Because once you can handle it, you don't need to fight or struggle. Instead, you naturally ask yourself, what can I do to help? Your whole energy shifts to one of giving and compassion, and you help raise the energy around you as you move through life. But how do you start? You don't begin with the big, overwhelming things. For example, you might not be able to handle the pain of losing a loved one, like if your mother passed away and you couldn't be with her. That's a tough thing, and maybe it's been bothering you for 20 years. That's okay. It's really hard to deal with. Someday you'll be able to handle it because it happened, and what choice do you have? If you don't learn to handle it, it will weigh on you forever. So, how do you learn? Start with the small stuff, things you normally overlook. Maybe you can't handle how hot it is today. That's where you begin. If you can't deal with something as simple as the weather, you'll always be in trouble. The issue isn't the heat, it's that you can't accept it. You need to see things differently. Reality isn't wrong, it just is. And you can't change it. So learning to handle reality, no matter what it is the key to inner peace. In his book Living Untethered, Michael Singer explains reality in one simple way. Reality is what has already happened. It's not about what's fair, right, or what should have happened. It's just what is. Once something happens, it's done, and you can't change that. No matter how wrong or unfair it feels, it's still reality. The real question is, can you accept it and move forward? That's where it all starts. Accepting that reality is simply what has already happened. Now you have to ask yourself, can I handle what's happening in front of me? Maybe the answer right now is no, but that doesn't mean you can't learn. Just like you learned how to do math, play an instrument, or any other skill, you can also learn how to handle reality. And this is the most important thing you can ever learn. More important than any other skill, because it's the very meaning of your life. You weren't sent to Earth as a punishment. You were sent here to learn, to grow, and to experience life in all its complexity. There are so many things happening around you, so many opportunities to help, give, and participate. Think about it. We've explored distant planets with powerful telescopes like the Hubble and James Webb. And what have we found? Dirt, rocks, fire, nothing like the incredible life you're surrounded by every day. Here on Earth, there's so much life everywhere you look. People, trees, animals, the sky, technology, food. It's all amazing. But instead of seeing how extraordinary everything is, many people just complain. Why? Because they can't handle reality. And that's the whole point of life on Earth. It's where souls come to evolve. Earth is where consciousness comes to learn how to handle what life throws at us. So how do you start learning to handle reality? You begin with the small stuff. The heat, the rain, traffic, or the driver in front of you who isn't using their blinker. These are the little things that bother you every day. Take the example of rain ruining your camping plans. You might think, why does it have to rain on my birthday? But the truth is, the rain doesn't know it's your birthday. You made yourself upset about something completely out of your control. Life is full of moments like this, things you like and things you don't. If you keep reacting to what you don't like, you'll never find peace. True spirituality begins when you decide, I want to learn how to handle reality. So start small. If the driver ahead of you doesn't use their blinker, don't get mad. They didn't hear you when you muttered under your breath, nice blinker, buddy. You only upset yourself for no reason. Or maybe the traffic lights keep turning red, one after another, and it frustrates you. But getting worked up about it doesn't change a thing. Handling reality means accepting these small, everyday annoyances without letting them get to you. And as you learn to handle the little things, you'll get better at handling the bigger ones too. That's how you grow. It's a process, but it's the most important thing you'll ever do. Here's the truth. Spirituality starts when you realize something simple. You're getting upset over things that aren't a big deal. What's ridiculous? Is it the red lights or the driver who didn't use a blinker? No, it's that you can't handle such small things. Imagine driving behind someone going slower than the speed limit. You get frustrated, maybe even try to pass them, risking an accident. But why? You're not handling reality. A few blocks later, that driver turns off, and all that anger you built up was for nothing. These small things are nothing in the grand scheme of things. Think about it. 1.3 million Earths can fit inside the sun, and here you are getting worked up over a slow driver or a missed blinker. And the fact that you even have a car or that blinkers exist is incredible. Remember those Mars rovers? People were fascinated by what they did. But here on Earth, we have millions of rovers, cars and machines, right in front of us. And yet we get frustrated by the smallest inconveniences. What if, instead of letting these little things bother you, you started enjoying them? How? By changing the way you see them. Let's say it's hot and you start complaining. Or maybe the person next to you starts complaining and you join in. That's your habit. You're letting the negative energy pull you in. But you can shift your thinking. Positive thinking isn't bad. It's a great path to start with. Eventually, you won't need to try to be positive because it will just come naturally. But for now, start with little steps. For example, when it's really hot, instead of getting annoyed, think about it like this. That heat is the energy of a star shining on me. The sun is a star, and you're standing in its light. How incredible is that? All of a sudden, the heat becomes something amazing, something to appreciate. You can do the same thing when you're stuck behind a slow driver. Instead of getting mad, imagine that driver is your grandmother, and this might be the last year she's able to drive before her license is taken away. She's holding on to her independence, and you're tailgating her, ready to honk. But wait, what if you softened your heart instead? What if you thought, okay, Grandma, take your time, I'm here with you. Suddenly, instead of frustration, you feel compassion and love. These are small techniques you can use to shift your perspective. Everyone gives you techniques, whether it's meditation or positive thinking. They're all great, as long as you're using them for the right reasons. Take meditation, for example. Meditation can help you find a calm space within yourself, where you don't feel affected by the chaos around you. But when you finish meditating, the world is still the same. You're just better at handling it for a little while. How long does it take before something throws you off balance again? Maybe it's a phone call, an annoying person, or even something as small as a bug crawling across the floor. The goal is to learn how to handle life's small challenges, so they don't throw you off track. These everyday annoyances, whether it's the heat, traffic, or small inconveniences, are your opportunities to practice. When you stop letting them get to you, you start finding peace in the middle of reality. And that's what spirituality is really about. Pay attention to what's really happening here. The key is to say, I want to learn how to handle reality. That's where it all begins. So you start practicing. You might use positive thinking or deep breathing or other techniques to help, and that's fine. The whole purpose is to help you handle the moments life presents to you. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is simple. Understand that life will keep unfolding in front of you, and your job is to handle whatever comes. If you can't handle something, it's there to help you grow. And if you can handle it, then it's a chance for you to serve, maybe even be a light for others. So start small. Focus on things you have no control over, like the weather. Think about it. You can't control the sun, the wind, the rain, or the cold. But can you handle them? Maybe you get annoyed because the wind messes up your hair, or the humidity makes it frizzy. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, can I handle the fact that wind, rain, humidity, snow, and heat all exist? These things will always happen whether you like it or not, so learn to handle them. Relax when they happen and try to think positively. For example, if it rains on the day you plan to go camping, instead of getting upset, say to yourself, well, at least the rain will help the crops grow, and there will be fresh produce tomorrow. You can always choose to shift how you respond to things, and positive thinking is a great way to start doing that. Now, what happens when something scares you? Maybe you're worried you said something wrong at work and might get fired, or you think someone won't like you and you end up losing sleep over it. These are real concerns, right? Yes, they are. But here's the important part. Just like you learn to handle the weather and traffic, You can learn to handle the things that happen in life. Because, let's be honest, things will happen. And guess what? Most of the time, you make things seem much worse than they actually are. Think back on your life. How many times did you worry about something that never even happened? Imagine if you had kept track. I bet the majority of your fears never came true. But when one of them does happen, you start thinking that justifies worrying about everything else. Don't give yourself that excuse. Instead, work with yourself. Lift yourself up. Whenever you feel that fear or worry creeping in, remind yourself that you've been through this before. As the Bhagavad Gita says, one should raise the self with the self, not trample down the self with the self. This means that your higher self, the part of you that's calm, wise, and strong, can help lift up your lower self, the part that gets anxious or afraid. Don't beat yourself up when you're feeling down or scared. Don't push those feelings away or hate that part of you. Be your own friend, not your enemy. Remember, you have the power to lift yourself up, handle the little things, then the bigger things, and keep raising yourself higher each time. That's the path to real growth and peace. You can start to working on yourself by taking small steps, and there are many ways to do this. When I first started, I used to fight against my inner struggles. Back then, I was practicing Zen, and I thought the answer was to keep pushing and battling my inner fears until they went away. But over time, I learned that fighting wasn't the answer. I eventually realized that I had created those inner battles by constantly suppressing everything that bothered me, all those emotions I shoved down. They turned into the very thing I was fighting against. I could keep spending my life trying to shut those feelings down, or trying to protect myself from things that might trigger them, or trying to make sure no one else does anything to make me feel worse. Or I could wake up and realize, wow, what have I done? It's like locking a scared child in a closet. No wonder my inner self is so messed up. I need to open the door, not keep pushing those feelings down. I need to help that part of me, just like you'd help a frightened child. Instead of fighting, I learned to take that scared part of myself by the hand and show it something bigger, like the universe. I'd imagine taking that part of me out of the closet and letting it see the stars and galaxies, and that part of me would say, wow, this is so much better than being locked away. It's about showing kindness to yourself. Let's say you're about to meet someone, maybe a date, or go to a job interview, and you feel nervous. Don't try to pretend you're not nervous. Don't try to be tough and push those feelings away. Instead, reach down into yourself and let those emotions surface. If part of you feels like crying or is scared, be gentle. Be like a parent to that part of yourself. Say, it's okay, I'm here with you, we can do this together. And here's something important, don't focus on the result. Tell yourself, it's not about whether I get the job, or whether the date goes perfectly. What matters is that I showed up and went through it. If you go to the interview and you don't get the job, that's okay. The point is, you faced the situation and you didn't let it leave you feeling broken inside. That's real growth. It's about going through these moments without carrying emotional scars. As you keep practicing this, something surprising will happen. Over time, you'll stop feeling so scared. Why? Because you're no longer setting impossible standards for yourself. You're not saying, if I don't get the job, I'm worthless, or comparing yourself to others who seem to have more. You let go of the idea that your worth depends on the outcome. What are you really doing in these situations? You ask yourself, did I go to the interview? Yes. Did I stay calm, open, and enjoy myself while talking to the interviewer? Did I have a good time meeting another person just like me, living on this planet with 8.3 billion other people? Yes, I did. And if you didn't get the job, so what? That just means you get to meet another interviewer next time. Isn't that exciting? Enjoy the process. Don't set expectations for yourself that make you feel guilty or like you failed. Failure isn't about not getting the job. True failure is when you can't handle the reality of what's happening. Success is when you can face life situations and handle them. Maybe you got into a relationship that seemed really good. You opened yourself up, learned a lot, but then they left you. How does that feel? It hurts, like your heart is being torn apart. But can you handle that pain? If you can't, then yes, it's going to mess you up for a long time. But if you can handle it, you'll learn from it and move forward. Maybe back in high school or junior high, heartbreak felt unbearable, and you didn't know how to handle it. But after a few breakups or even divorces, you've learned to cope better. It's like learning to play golf. At first you miss some shots, but with practice, you get better at hitting the ball. The important thing is to keep learning and growing. That's how life works, and there's nothing wrong with it. There is no such thing as failure in the sense that you're used to. There's only learning, growing, and asking yourself, am I willing to keep trying? Am I willing to go through different situations with a more open heart? And when you give your best effort in any situation, no matter what it is, something special comes back to you. It doesn't matter if it's a job interview, a relationship, or any other challenge. If you do your best, the result is always meaningful. For example, if I go on a date with you, and I'm nervous because I'm not great at dating, but I still pick myself up and do the best I can, I've already won. I try to be my best, not to be awkward or weird, even if that's tough. I give it my best shot, and if in the end you say you don't want to see me again, that's okay. I look at that and realize that it's not the end of the world. I showed up, I did my best, and that's what really matters. So in the end, it's all about how you handle what life throws your way, and how open you are to learning and growing from every experience. There's no failure, only growth. Did you do the best you could? If the answer is yes, that means you'll do even better next time. Why? Because you've learned something. The outcome isn't what matters most. What truly matters is giving your best effort in the moment and being open to whatever comes next. What comes back to you is your teacher. The feedback from life is like a lesson, and it's sacred. You're here to learn and grow from everything you experience. Think about it this way. If you had a basketball coach who yelled at you every time you missed a shot, you wouldn't improve. But if they said, all right, here's what you can work on. Try adjusting your shooting form, you'd start getting better. The same applies to how you treat yourself. Be patient, guide yourself with kindness, and always keep learning. What will happen if you do this? You'll get better at handling reality. Just like practicing piano scales, the more you practice, the better you'll get. You may not become a concert pianist, but you will definitely improve. The same goes for handling life's challenges. You get better by practicing, by going through different experiences and learning from them. But what does it really mean to get better at handling things? It means you can stay calm and happy, even when things don't go the way you expected. Maybe you made a smart investment and it paid off, or maybe something unexpected happened. Either way, you're able to stay steady and peaceful. If your boss calls you in for a meeting tomorrow, instead of losing sleep and stressing out, you think, okay, I get to see the boss tomorrow. You're not worried about what might happen because you trust that you can handle whatever comes. That's what life is about, learning to handle the ups and downs. The situations will change, but the growth inside of you is permanent. When you get better at handling things, you stop being afraid of them. And wouldn't that be amazing? Imagine walking around without fear. Instead of fear, what do you feel? Love. Why? Because love is your true nature. When you stop getting pulled down by worry or fear, your natural state of love and joy shines through. Inside of you, there's so much energy, happiness, and love. And once you learn how to handle life's challenges, you can let all of that flow freely. It's like waves of joy and peace moving through you every moment. Your heart opens up and you become filled with light and love. You don't have to do anything special for this to happen. It's just who you are underneath all the worry and stress. When you're in this state, it lifts everyone around you. Just by being who you truly are, you raise the energy and vibration of everything and everyone. That's the impact you can have when you're not weighed down by fear or doubt. So, will you work on these things every day? Every moment of life is a chance to connect with something greater and grow into the best version of yourself. When you keep working on handling life's challenges, you become a gift to the world, a blessing to the earth. Keep practicing, keep learning, keep growing, and raising yourself. You'll be amazed at what happens when you let your true self shine. Thank you for listening.